Hello everyone and welcome back for another episode of Indie Impressions. My name is Nick and today we are going to be checking out one of my absolute favorites of all time, Super Meat Boy by the amazing Team Meat. Now if you haven't heard of this one by now, you need to go out and get it. Don't even watch the video, just go get it. Straight up. Like there's no reasoning with you at this point if you haven't come to that conclusion. No, I'm kidding. This is basically one of the most accessible, brilliant platformers that I've ever played, and one that I wanted to take a minute and talk about because it has a lot to do with how I got to be where I am doing what I'm doing right now and why I have such passion for indie games. This specific game right here in front of us had a lot to do with that. It's incredibly well designed. It sparked a passion in me for level design that I didn't think I had quite to the level that I do. I became a pretty, well, I feel like a person, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I feel like I was somewhat central around the Super Meat Boy modding community. I made a number of different chapters for it, probably nearly 100 levels, and just spent tons and tons of times playing through this. Now, if I start it up here, you will see, if I go to my statistics, I have 0.000% here. I've actually cleared out my save again. I do this from time to time. I have, I think, 300%, there's 2 or 3 of them now, and I've spent, I don't know, hundreds of hours between the XBLA version and the PC version playing this over and over again. Granted, I'm still not perfect at it, so watch the, the gameplay's not going to be exactly perfect, but I'm going to do my best here. So if you don't know what this game is about, it is essentially a medley of all of the best indie games that have come out recently, distilled down into an absolutely brilliant platformer, very Twitch-based, very dexterity-based, and requires very little in the way of understanding to actually play this game. It is all about don't touch the buzzsaws, get the bandage girl, win, get some bandages, unlock stuff, and it's got a ton of replay value. This game will probably take you like 10 to 15 hours on your first playthrough just to get through the basics of it, and then if you want to go back and 100% everything, you probably spend like 20 to 30 or more, depending on your skill level, of course. And then there's leaderboards, which you can go and compete with your friends on. You can save your replays if you do particularly well. And I always just show off the settings here, so just in case you're wondering. So let us start over again. I mean, it seems fairly silly to touch on a game at this point like this that's so ubiquitous when it comes to indie games. I think a lot of you guys have already played this to some extent, at least hopefully you have. But just in the event that you haven't, or in case some of you find this later on, I figured it's worth showing off. Especially because I just have so much to say about it. So let's start up in the forest in the very first level here. Part of the fun of this game is that there are all these parodies and little interesting bits and bobs thrown in from other games, which makes this really sort of a celebration of gaming in a way. And really sort of embraces sort of a culture that I don't think I knew existed, that all these indie developers are sort of out there in their own little community supporting each other. And I mean, on top of all of these little flourishes, the gameplay itself is extremely polished, and it's probably one of the best examples of level design I've ever seen. There's attention to detail in just about every respect, and the game rewards the player for, carefully navigating different courses in different ways. Now, if you go back, you'll see I obviously just jumped on the left here to jump to the goal. That's one way you can solve the level, but the traditional way, if you just played it for the first time, would be to follow your way up here, slowly make your way to Bandage Girl, and that's really all the game is. Just going from the starting point to the goal however you best can. Now, as you progress in skill, much like with Super Metroid, you're going to become much, much more facile with the controls, and you'll be able to navigate the courses in ways that maybe you would think weren't intended, but most of the time were actually intended. It's like with this one, if you really wanted to, you could do something like this. Although I'm not sure it really saved me much of any time. But there are numerous ways to progress through a lot of these courses, and I think that's where a lot of the replay value comes from, in addition to getting A+s and bandages and unlocking everything and perfecting everything, and just going for high scores on the leaderboards. Now, this is a case where the game and level design actually necessitates the player to learn how to use it correctly to progress, otherwise you are going to be punished. If you don't understand how to run here, you simply can't make this jump. Like, you can try over and over again. I think, well, maybe you can actually make the jump if you're spot on perfect. Actually, I think I can by cheating, but I would think most people wouldn't be able to accomplish this. Is it? Maybe it's not actually possible. I feel like if I catch it at exactly the right moment, and this is the kind of thing I do when I make levels, like I mess around with stuff like this. to try and test the exact boundaries. It looks like you can catch that corner there. Maybe you can't. Anyway, you gotta run, make the jump, and you're good to go. I'm sure you're probably getting frustrated watching me play over the same level over and over again. But, you know, again, this isn't an example of me with perfect gameplay. This is just me talking about the game, so hopefully nobody minds there. Visually, this game is actually really charming. I don't know if everybody agrees with me on the same level here, but I think that there's a lot about this game that's actually quite stunning. But I also am a big advocate of sprite-based design, 2D pixelated graphics and such. And I think this is, like I said, a celebration of retro game design, and I think it's one of the most polished ones that we've seen in current day gaming. So we've entered this warp zone, which is essentially a little secret, and we are taken to this retro world where the palettes are all swapped and all the sprites are a little bit more minimalistic. You know, everything's down-resed a bit. And we're going to be jumping around here trying to make our way to the bandage and then to Bandage Girl. And the thing about these warp zones is that you essentially have to complete each level with 3 lives. Now, that doesn't sound like a huge challenge until you see what exactly the odds are as we get further on. See, the part of the brilliance of this game is the difficulty curve, and the fact that on your first playthrough you're going to learn and progress a ton as a player to be able to make your way forward. Most people playing this the first time, I have a feeling they're going to hit a stopping point at some point, at least once, if not numerous times, where they basically feel like they are completely just not able to progress anymore. And the brilliant thing about it is that feeling is rather fleeting. You'll probably feel that way for a while, you'll eventually overcome that feeling, and you will then be able to crush the level later on. Now, because I took that warp zone, I didn't actually A+ that level, which means getting the... Oh, this is actually the wrong one. This one I just took too long because I was being a dummy. But yeah, essentially you want to get an A+ on every level, which unlocks the Dark World version of that level, which is a much harder version that you'll get to later. So that is that. We've gotten the A+ there. Back to level 5, because I took the warp zone on this one, I didn't actually reach the goal of it, so there is still a little bit more to do. Of course, I should also mention there is outstanding music to this game, and music that I've listened to over and over and over and over again, and still am not bored of. And in fact, part of the charm of this in general is just the fact that the music so well complements the gameplay. I never felt like there was any kind of dissonance when it came to what one level is trying to portray visually, and that the music and the graphics didn't go well together. Oh, we got a little glitched out squirrel there. That is a thing that's definitely happened numerous times when I've played through this. There's a lot of bugs and glitches, but it kind of adds to the charm of the game in some way. Nothing's going to be perfect, and there was always this sort of fleeting level of perfection that I think the developers were chasing after, and eventually had to kind of call it quits, because if you just kept patching this game forever, we would never reach a final goal. There were, you know, a few things that I would have really liked to see addressed that never did get addressed, and actually it was a real shame that some big jerks decided to sort of take down the modding community in Super Meat Boy because they decided to hack the level servers so there isn't really a hub anymore for players to display their levels, which I found that to be a huge shame, and I actually would probably still be designing levels at this point. I still don't remember how exactly you're supposed to do this. There's a trick to this one where you can actually slide right up the inside of this. See, there's all these speedrunning paths that if you're real good at this, you'll understand how to get past them. This one, I'm not sure I ever figured out. Is it off of this wall, maybe? That seems a little far. I was never really huge in the speedrunning scene with this game, but I did actually try to keep my levels, my scoring and times a little bit ahead of the game at the very beginning when this came out on PC. I think I have a screenshot of me at number 3 on the world leaderboards, which was a pretty big deal to me because I was always like in the top, like 100,000 on the XBLA version. So in this case, I've entered a character warp zone where I get to play as Commander Video from the Bit Trip series. And his deal, and basically all the secret characters have some sort of little ability. His deal, though, is that he can hover in the air, which leads to some interesting platforming puzzles. And that's why I think this game sort of transcends a lot of the tropes of traditional platformers. This game is not just its own platformer, it's actually sort of like its own platform for platformers. And the fact that the modding community embraced this game to such a degree, and the fact that there is so much accessibility and different ways to approach level design because of all these secret characters, means that you could do this over and over and over again and come up with hundreds of different level designs that better complement certain characters over others. So essentially there is a variety, you know, almost a little Big Planet style of ways you can approach custom maps in this game, which it just lends to endless replayability. I mean, I actually did a series for a while on just me randomly playing through levels that I could find on the custom level hub, and I don't think I probably would have ever run out of content for that, although I did eventually start to hit a wall where I seem to hit a bunch of the same ones. Now, if you guys were wondering how great am I at this game, don't get too excited. I'm not super great at it. I mean, I try. I've spent a lot of time with it, obviously. I have 100% of the game, so there's a certain level of ability that you have to be able to do that. But as far as like achievement-wise, I think I've only ever 100%ed without taking a single hit, and basically what they refer to that as like the Iron Boy achievements, that you haven't gotten killed even once and gone through a whole chapter. I've only done that for the first and maybe the second one. I don't actually remember. I may have attempted the second one a number of times. I feel like I could probably do it if I spent enough time with it, but I just really wasn't devoted enough to want to spend the time. But, you know, that's part of the appeal here, is that there's different things for different people, and if you want to really spend that time and work on it, you can. And there were a number of custom chapters that were even made by the developers that were designed to really challenge those out there that were those types of speedrunning, like Iron Boy style players that really just had no fear when it came to the hardest possible level designs. And I'm known for making some pretty hard levels myself, which is why it's a little silly and embarrassing that I haven't been able to get this bandage and run to the end yet. But, you know, with, lacking in practice for, I haven't played this in close to 6 months now, you definitely get a little bit rusty. Not to say that you can't get it back, though. But I have pretty much tested the engine of this game to its breaking points. I've tried to, in some of my custom levels, push this game as far as it's really able to be taken, at least as far as I can tell. I've actually exploited some of the tricks to it, to the game engine, and like weird little physics kinks and strange little things. There's a lot of nuances and bizarre behaviors in this game, like I said earlier, that give it some of its charm. And so this warp zone we've entered is like a Game Boy tile set, which is very interesting. And this is another example of great level design, in that this level is, the bottom part has breakaway blocks that are acting sort of like a timeline, like a ticking time bomb, essentially, that if you take too long, you're not going to be able to grab that bandage, and you're not going to be able to make it to the goal. So you have to rush through that to some degree, although the timing is pretty generous, I have to say. It's actually kind of hard to catch the bandages here just because they're hard to see. But if you look carefully, there's one in the top middle that we're going to have to grab as we leap through the air in one fell swoop here. So there's a lot of timing, there's a lot of dexterity, a lot of memorization in some of the harder levels, and with some of the very last levels, like, I don't know, the last couple ones, there's, in Cotton Alley, you have to run up this endless, well, seemingly endless series of saw blades in various patterns. There's a called 4-letter word, I think, and that is one of the harder levels in the game, although the Dark World version of it is even harder. But yeah, right now what you see seems sort of like a piece of cake. If you're not familiar with the difficulty curve in Super Meat Boy, don't think that this is at all representative of the kind of challenge that you're going to expect as you see some of the endgame levels. They are definitely Herculean. They're, in fact, like the kids' levels, some people thought like couldn't be done for a while, and Edmund even made a challenge for the Christmas holiday Steam celebration. Basically, you got an achievement, or like an award, basically, for getting through these special kid levels, if you could do it even, and a lot of people couldn't, just for getting through them in general at all. And doing it in one sitting was even... I can't remember what it was. I think it might have been another reward. Oh, wow, that was really dumb. Yeah, I think you had to get through all 5 of them in one sitting to get the best rewards, and then there was one for just, like, beating 1 level, one for beating 3 or something like that. So, again, I'm playing pretty casually right now, so no big deal. Just having fun. This is a boss, by the way. There are bosses at the end of each chapter. The goal here is we just need to rush to the exit before it catches up with us. Thankfully, the timing is very generous since it's the very first level. So there's not a whole lot to worry about other than just platforming somewhat stupidly, which I am guilty of at times. And all we need to do really is just stand up here at this top little edge. I kind of always felt like the end of this boss fight should be a little bit better marked out, like that you need to go stand up there. Because as it is, it's really just a little scripted sequence that only ends if you make it to a place where you don't get killed, so I guess it's sort of... self-terminating in that respect, and you just have to know to stand up there, and if you don't really think about it, and you don't, you get to that wall, you're like, okay, well, it's a dead end, what am I supposed to do now? And you just sit and wait for the thing to come kill you. But hopefully in a couple rounds you'll figure it out. Of course, some excellent cutscenes here, most of which are quite laughter-inducing, and also something I didn't realize at first, I believe mostly all of them, if not all of them, are rendered from assets that you can find in the actual levels. Like all of these trees and stuff, the parallaxing and all these things are actually, I believe you could design things like this in the actual level editor. Of course, there isn't a squirrel crying. It's a little bit on the macabre side, of course, too, but if you know Edmund's work, it shouldn't be any surprise to you. I mean, the premise essentially revolves around a boy without any skin seeking out his companion, which is a girl covered in bandages, and there is something quite poetic about that if you think about it real hard. Each one of them needs the other to complete each other, and, it's been talked about before. And by the way, if you haven't watched Indie Game the Movie, which is chronicling, essentially, the majority of the movie is chronicling the development of this game and the release of it subsequently. It's an absolutely beautiful watch. If you're a fan of indie games in any capacity, it absolutely deserves your attention, as well as this game itself does, too. Now, there's talk at one point that there was to be, and I don't believe it's gone anywhere, I think it's just on hiatus, there's to be a mobile Super Meat Boy at some point released, and I'd love to see what they do with that, because right now, I'm a little bit skeptical as to how exactly that would work controls-wise, and I believe they've gone on record as saying something to the effect of, like, we'll only do it if it actually makes sense, like if it actually feels right, and I think that's absolutely the right way to go. Because in my experience, I've had nothing but grief when it comes to platformers on mobile. But I am also, a pretty diehard Super Meat Boy fan, so if they find a way to make that work, then I will, by all means, embrace it. So yeah, I mean, the more Meat Boy, the better. They've said that there won't be a sequel to the game. That's fine. I mean, this game is pretty much close to perfect as it's going to get anyway, so I think it would be doing a disservice to try and replicate the formula of what makes this great. So, I'm always a fan of, like, if something works, don't exploit it. Just, like, do what you need to do, make the most of it, and then move on, keep your head held high, hold the pride that you made something so good. And I think that is exactly the case with Super Meat Boy. I'm pretty sure if we tried to do some kind of a sequel, unless there was a very specific thing that it needed to do to evolve beyond this version of the game, I don't feel like it would necessarily be more successful. I think this is sort of, like, as good as it needs to be. And it's not to say that I wouldn't buy the crap out of it if such a thing existed. I absolutely would, and I would hope that it would be as successful as it possibly could be. I just think, like, this is already good enough. Again, I would love to play more Super Meat Boy in any capacity, and more developer levels would be excellent. But if that really needed to be done, there's no reason why we couldn't just down the line resurrect the level portal and just continue making stuff for this. Or even just patch in a few new palettes for the level editor. There's enough meat to this game that as it stands, aside from maybe engine constraints, that I don't see a reason why this should not be just continued to be expanded upon instead of iterated upon. Hopefully that makes sense. Some really lovely colors in this, by the way. I don't know if I've really paid enough respect to the fact that this game just visually looks excellent to me. I don't know if everybody feels that way, but personally I really find it to be a lovely looking game. And a lot of that is just due to the artwork of Edmund McMillen and how much time he spent, lovingly crafting these levels. You may not think much of it, but the backgrounds in some of these levels, especially this level as you look behind us right now, this took quite a while to make. I mean, I've been there myself, I've messed around with the level editor for hours upon hours upon hours, and a design like that, especially if you're making it with no reference, like you are the reference, you've created these templates, you've made the ideas the way they are, these ideas are entirely yours, you don't have anything to borrow from. It's going to take a while to come up with these sorts of ideas unless, this is what you had in mind from the get-go, in which case, bravo. Your sense of style is definitely way over my head a lot of the time, and I really do respect it. By the way, this is one of those instances where you can play this level in a number of different ways. If you choose to, you can actually catch a key right there that a lot of people will run right past, which is why there's so much freaking depth to this game. There's a lot of things that on the surface you won't even notice. But when you go back and check them out again, wow, okay, I'm just playing really poorly right now. When you go back and check through them again, there's a whole bunch of little things that'll add extra game time to it. Oh, alright, so that actually opened the warp zone, but I need to actually do it on a jump, which I will do this time. There we go. And then we'll land right in there. There's hundreds of levels for this, by the way, just in the game itself. In addition to just the actual chapters to the game, there's also a number of custom chapters. Like I said, hundreds and hundreds of user levels. Like I said earlier, though, unfortunately, the user levels are not really able to be updated anymore, uploaded anymore. But what's there is absolutely meaty enough, if you'll pardon the term, to carry you through probably more Super Meat Boy than you'll need to ever play. And I don't mean that to sound negative, it's entirely a good thing. And this is a straight-up timing game right here, where we just need to out-time the saw blade, you know, down to like a couple milliseconds to get through to the top. And we did grab that bandage on the way, which, as you've noticed, will unlock a few more characters. There's a whole bunch of characters here, and a lot of them take quite a bit of work. And a few of them are actually pretty broken in terms of gameplay, but I think that's, in terms of gameplay, really just for fun. If you get to the 100... well, I guess I shouldn't spoil it, but, you know, if you haven't seen it by now at the same time, you know, you're doing yourself a disservice anyway. Alright, let's actually beat this level properly. And that's what happens when you rush through. You can actually beat your way back before the boxes have even opened up. So there's, what is it, 6 main chapters? Well, there's 5 to get to the end, then a final boss, and then it opens up, and then there's Cotton Alley, which is like a bonus chapter, and then you unlock all the bonus worlds after that, which are Dark World. And then you can play through the whole game again on harder levels. So the value proposition for this game is absolutely phenomenal. Again, I've spent hundreds of hours playing this. It may not reflect it necessarily on my Steam timer, but trust me, I have. Let's replay this now, because there's actually a second thing we can do in this one. You'll notice that bandage hidden right down here in the corner. Essentially what we need to do is grab the key out of the top left and make our way back down. And I need to not hit the ceiling there, because that's going to result in my death every single time. I just did the corner glitch there, which, if you haven't played enough Meat Boy, you won't know what that means, but essentially there's a little bug with the engine, where you can kind of shoot yourself vertically up a wall if you have the right momentum. And it's not really something you can depend on most of the time, but if you can do it, it's kind of a cool thing to know about. There's actually a way that you can sort of glitch through geometry by doing that as well, or at least find ways to exploit the level design. Now again, the challenge here is ever progressing. Right now we're still at a level where most people shouldn't have a terrible, terrible struggle getting through. It should be challenging, you know, for your first time. But you probably won't get stuck on too many walls at this point. It's probably going to be in the next chapter, the Salt Factory, where a lot of people start running into difficulty spikes that they might have trouble overcoming for a bit. I think that's where I first got stuck. But my first time playing this game, you might be surprised to hear this, I actually beat the whole game, I think in like 1 if not 2 sittings at most. I pretty much just played it for hours straight, because I just could not get enough of how streamlined and perfect it is. And when I say perfect, I mean the controls are like literally the best platformer controllers that I've ever experienced. There's not much that really touches this game, and it really does make a lot of other games feel somewhat inferior if you want really precise platforming controls. That was a waste of time, wasn't it? Let's just do that properly this time. Oh, well, okay, let's do it properly this time. How about that? You gotta run through real fast, and then jump straight up that wall, and you should be good to go. Have to not get careless as well. Alright, jump past all these guys. We got our bandage. Unfortunately, this part right here is a little tricky, because there's not a whole lot you can do. Probably should have gotten the key first, because now I just created a long time waste for myself. Whoa, hello there. Oh man, I hit him on the way back down. Well, no big deal. I unlocked the warp zone. Don't really want to leave that one unfinished, so let's do it properly. I'll get the key first this time. So there's all sorts of crazy macabre art design elements to this game. I mean, like I've said a number of times, I think the graphics in this are absolutely beautiful. There's a whole bunch of crazy bosses, many of which get mirrored later on in The Binding of Isaac, and there's just tons of different little references from Edmund's other work in all of his other work, which is one of the cool things about what he does, is that he constantly brings things back for callbacks. So if you're a fan of a particular character or design, a lot of times you'll be able to see something about it somewhere else. Occasionally you just gotta know when to just forfeit a jump there and just back off. Whoa, that was really bad. Alright, well I still saved myself there. There we go. It's also amazing how far you can go backward in terms of skill after you haven't played this for a while. You know, the level of what I thought I had for skill in this, I thought was quite high, and now to be making this many mistakes is pretty silly. But it'll happen. You know, there's a couple levels here I haven't even A+'d on my first way through. Although it may have been because I was doing other stuff. Yeah, I was probably just talking and not really paying attention. That's the other thing. This game does require a certain degree of concentration for sure. And if you're trying to come up with important things to say while also playing this and thinking about where you're trying to go, it's going to make things a little difficult. So we'll just run through the second chapter here, and then I guess we'll call it a day. And as if I needed to say it, Super Meat Boy gets pretty much my highest degree of thumbs up that is available. Oh, come on. That was super lame. I can't remember any of my speedrun paths through this from what I used to do. Not that I ever had, like, the best times in the world, but there were points when I was able to at least, you know, find a path that seemed like probably the closest to, you know, a linear progression to get from point A to point B possible. Although a lot of people really do like to optimize those things and get really into this insane level of min-maxing when it comes to this level design that I don't think I've quite gotten to. Although I try at times. Look at the timing on that. There is so much time devoted to the level testing in this, it must have just been absolutely insane. And knowing the levels of, like, pressure to get this game done, and all of the stuff that we have found out about the behind the scenes of the development of this game from Indie Game the Movie, it's phenomenal that it came out this perfect. Although, I know, I'm using that in a somewhat subjective way. I mean, no game is really perfect, but at least for me anyway. I feel like this is one of the best games that I know of. And it's big talk, and I know it is, and I know that it's kind of silly to spend so much time kissing butts, but at the same time, you know, I'm just being honest. There is a bandage in there, by the way. I don't want to spoil how to get to it for you guys. It took me a little bit to figure that one out, actually. And back down we go. Yeah! It's a good time. I'm kind of a fan of this sort of level design, too, where things are a little bit more open. There's a good degree of different types of level in this, some of which are very linear, some of which are a little bit more exploratory in nature, some of which have sort of gimmicks to them. There's a lot of different elements that get mixed up as the level design progresses, and, you know, the fact that each level, or each chapter, rather, has a theme to it that they work around, I think is a really cool thing, and I would love to... Oh, wow, that was really dumb. I would absolutely love to see one day, maybe there could be, you know, an addition or some sort of a patch or add-on that could add more chapter themes to this game. You know, maybe 10 years down the road, we revisit Super Meat Boy in all of its glory and add on a few new gameplay conventions. You know, I would be so behind that. But for now, things are just pretty much great the way they are. And this is clearly going to be one of those games that, like, pretty much every year I'm going to have to go back to and replay again, now that I can look at it in the context of whatever the climate of the indie game world is. Because, if I haven't said it enough already, this game is one of the sort of formational games, for me anyway, that helped me find the direction of what indie games were going to become as things progress. Like I said, it's a celebration of all things gaming, in a really lovely way that's just really, it's very joyous in what it does. It's pure, it's really just all about having fun, and it doesn't get into too much complicated political crap. It's not about any of that, it's just what I feel gaming distilled down to its purest form should be. Although I also acknowledge there's plenty of room and plenty of latitude for other types of experiences out there, so don't think that I'm advocating that this is like the best type of game. I just think that it might be that for me, is all. Alright, so there's another boss. This time we need to progress to the top of a tower while watching out for this horrible blood clot monster. I always thought this boss was kind of easy, actually. At least comparatively, because if you are really fast... Wow, I actually clipped through the dude a little bit there. If you're really fast, you might not even encounter him in much of an aggressive form. He'll kind of just wait to die. Although I guess the challenge here might be more about just platforming. And there we go. So that's Chapter 2 done. Still quite a few more to go, and the difficulty curve, again, is still on the easy side. As we get to the Salt Factory, the third chapter, we're going to be introduced to missile launchers and such, which I find to be sort of the bane of my existence. Probably my least favorite element as it pertains to Super Meat Boy level design. They're basically these homing missile launchers that if you've ever played something like N+, or just N in general, they'll just zoom in after you, and you kind of have to figure out your way through the level in a roundabout way that is constantly adjusting for these elements. And I prefer the more dexterity-based as it pertains to solid level design instead of constantly shifting what you're trying to do. Although, you know, I grant that a lot of people like that sort of thing as well. There was a bit of a movement in the modding community for very strong amounts of rocket launchers and saw blade launchers and such, and I found that to be somewhat annoying. But we are furthering the narrative here of Dr. Fetus constantly being one step ahead of us. These demented characters are my favorite thing ever. I wonder how long these animations must have taken, too. Oh, I didn't get A+s on all of them. The completionist in me finds this a little bit infuriating at times. I just want to just conquer everything to its fullest. Did I get all the A+s here? Well, I just wanted to show you very briefly the Dark World and what that looks like. So now that I've unlocked A+s on those levels, you can see that they light up. All the ones that have an A+ that are shiny right now, they'll be available for a level in the Dark World. So if I go back to level 1, if you remember, it's a pretty easy level. Now, a little less easy, although still pretty easy. The difficulty curve here, I can't remember what Tommy said was officially, like, the progression, but I think it was something like, this starts at around, like, the 4th chapter in terms of difficulty. But it's just a really cool thing that once you've finished the game and you feel like you've gotten everything out of the game that there is to get, there's still a whole nother game available for you. It's sort of that same revelation when you played Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and you get to the point where you think you finished the game, and then actually you were halfway done with it if you were playing it right. I just love that kind of thing. And then the remixes on the levels are also very cool to me as well. The way that you can take some of the palettes and swap around through them, mess around with some of the level design to remix some of the pass-through things. I find that really fascinating, and I absolutely am grateful that they took the time to even include this, because the amount of time it must have taken to remix all those levels is crazy, like I said. But yeah, Team Meat, near and dear to my heart, probably some of my favorite indie developers ever. And I do hope that they know that. But yeah, without Super Meat Boy, I never probably would have started making YouTube videos, because that was really the point. I started making them so I could show off some of my custom levels, thanks to my friend Max, who got me involved with how to do video editing, because I was really totally new to that as well. And from there, things just sort of took off. So Meat Boy led to YouTube, YouTube led to indie games led to indie impressions, and that's where we are. So without this game and a little bit of coaxing, you know, things might be different right now, and I'm just glad that things happened the way they did. And as far as indie games as a whole, I really think that a lot of the positive attitudes about indie development started with games like this and Minecraft. Wow, that was a really silly jump. I actually landed on that angular platform, which actually just shot me right over the top. Why can't I just... I actually know that there's a way to get through this. If I angle my jump just right, I should be able to go through this crack and then land on the left side. There we go. That's what I was trying to do. It's usually when I try to do those types of jumps under pressure that I just mess them up over and over and over again. See, this is where I really start to have fun. Once we get into this intricate, crazy saw stuff and things are just starting to become really chaotic. The beginning levels are a lot of fun because you can run through them really fast, but this is where you get to really hone your skills and see what you're capable of in platformers. And I have to say, this is probably one of the hardest platformers that I know of. Well, okay, I should qualify it. It's extremely hard, but it's also extremely rewarding. Much in the way that Dark Souls has a lot of inspiration from that sort of an ethos. I think that this is really what I love about gaming, is when a game is extremely challenging, but fair. You know, when you mess up in Super Meat Boy, it's usually due to your own lack of either understanding, lack of control, something like that, that led you to get to that point of messing up. In this case, it's a lack of understanding that I can't seem to time this saw blade in a way that is going to allow me to go back down and come back up. Very sad, because it's really not that challenging, but I got it. Alright, through here. Wait for that. And sometimes you get stuck on little edges and stuff. There's, you know, little imperfections and such, as I've mentioned a few times, but nothing that really holds the game back in any meaningful way. I forgot, can I... Oh no, I think it's a little too close. I thought for a second maybe I could jump off the center post here. No, I don't think I can. That was cutting a little close. And through here... Oh, there's no platform there. Okay, I thought where that little bit of wire was that I might be able to stand. It's always a constant challenge when you're designing levels for Super Meat Boy is not obfuscating clarity when it comes to where you can stand and where you can't, what's an obstacle and what isn't. And I still struggle with that today, even though I've designed, you know, close to 100 levels in the game. And it's something that I think has really helped me understand level design in a better way. A lot of the things I've learned from Super Meat Boy, it's actually been a huge boon for me in terms of just understanding game design. So, you know, all around, this game has been really helpful to me, you know, like on a very personal level. I've taken a lot more from this game in particular than I have from a lot of others. I don't know why I'm having trouble with this. I just need to land on that face there. Alright, and then we have a timed level here. So these are always fun because you can usually exploit them. If you're really skilled, you can usually get between saw blades, although I'm not sure if this level is one of the levels you can do that on. Is this... I feel like there was a spot you could stand, is it? Yeah, it is right here. And then you just go right through it. But, you know, that's just me. I love to break games. My goal there was to actually jump back through the saw blades so I could still be challenged by them, but oh well. Let's just actually beat the level this time. How about that? I start to need a little bit of concentration on this. I actually should have gone through that in one jump, but I chose not to. There we go. Still got an A+. That was actually very generous in terms of timing. So my goal at this point would then be to go back through A+ all the levels I missed, and then go and 100% this whole chapter. As you can see, it says I've got 83% complete on Chapter 1, and 50% complete on Chapter 2. Chapter 3 I haven't even started yet, and then we've got 4 and 5, and then 6 and 7. Chapter 5 is the end. That one only has 5 levels to it, but then it's got the Dark World levels. So, Chapter 5's the end is probably one of my favorite chapters, and as such, there's actually a user-made chapter called Remnants, which actually sought to sort of expand the visual design of that particular chapter into a full 20-level chapter, which I really appreciate. It's a really well-done one as well, and one of my favorites to go through in the custom levels. Of course, once you've unlocked a certain number of bandages, you actually unlock the ability to go through to the level portal, although I think there was a point when they actually just said anyone could do that. I'm not actually going to risk starting up any custom levels just because if I do that, there's a good chance it might crash. There are still some crashes, unfortunately. The game still could use a couple more patches at times. But, you know, like I said, nothing that completely mars the experience. And, you know, if you have a little bit of time, seriously, spend it with Super Meat Boy. For freaking hell, what are you doing at this point? You should have done this by now. Anyway, before we start going around in circles, I just wanted to spend some time with this, share it with you, why this is one of the most meaningful games to me in terms of indie games. I'm going to probably do a couple more episodes like this, because there are a few formational, very important indie games to me that I would absolutely love the opportunity to talk about. But I sort of felt like it wasn't a good idea to do when I was just getting started doing what I was doing. I didn't want to give people the wrong impression that I was out there to, you know, just boost already very successful indie games into a higher echelon of success. Although, not to say that I don't want Team Meat to be as successful as possible. It couldn't be further from the truth. I just want to make sure that the little guys, like the littlest little guys if possible, can get somewhere where they're videos essentially can find an audience, or their games rather. So, I mean, that's really what I'm about anyway. But now that I've had a chance to speak on Super Meat Boy, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will not be too upset that I chose to spend today's episode doing something a little bit different. It's not so much an impressions episode as a sort of a recap, but, you know, it's still my impressions. They're just post-impressions instead of pre-impressions, if that makes any sense. So let's head back out to the main menu there so you can have the title card going out. If you haven't played Super Meat Boy by now, seriously, go get it. It is worth whatever price it is available for at the moment. It's been on sale so many different times. I've seen it on sale for like $3. I've given away copies of it. I intend to do that more in the future if I can. One of my very, very favorite indie games, and one of my very favorite games in general, indie or not. So, you know, if I could give it any more of a glowing recommendation, I would. I believe I have run into the ceiling of glowing recommendations, though, as far as that goes, so... Granted, I know not everybody's into super difficult platformers, but I feel that there is something here for just about everybody. Even if you're not into all of the depth that the game has to offer, the surface level of the game, as long as you like platformers to some degree, there is something for you to play here. And also, of course, you can't be too turned off by the violent and the, you know, the gory stuff. Hopefully that's not a big deal. It is presented generally pretty cartoonishly, though, so hopefully it's not quite as offensive as some of the things that you see in The Binding of Isaac. But... you know, that is all a matter of, you know, subjective truth, whatever you're into. But that is going to do it for today's episode, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I will give you the abbreviated plugs. As always, though, if you'd like to check out more in the series, indie-impressions.com is my website where I keep all the episodes archived neatly for your perusal. They're all tagged and sorted, so if you have a specific type of game that you're into, or would like to just check out the free games, the Steam games, the Deseret games, or whatever else platform-wise you'd like to see, that's where you can find it over on that website. I also have a Facebook page, facebook.com/indieimpressions, where I post every day's new episodes. You can check that out. Leave a like if you choose. It helps me out a little bit, but, you know, not obligated or anything, just if you use Facebook. I've also got a Twitter handle, which is @RockLeeSmile, so feel free to let me know what you thought of today's episode, or just send me a comment, question, suggestion, whatever it is you want to talk about over to that Twitter handle. I also do have a contact form over on indie-impressions.com. So if you're an indie developer and you'd like to get in contact with me about the possibility of showing off your game on the show, that is where you can contact me for that possibility. But that is going to do it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, make sure you come back again tomorrow, because I do a new episode every single day without fail. And I will be back again tomorrow around the same time, so I hope to see you here. And let me know what you think of Super Meat Boy in the comments. How has it changed you? What have you done with it? What has it done for you? Vice versa. Any opinions are always welcome in the comments. Please do talk to me about it. I'd love to hear from everybody, because I know I have quite a few Meat Boy fans out there, since that's where I got started in YouTube anyway, hopefully. Hopefully you're fans, I mean. But that is it, guys. I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a lovely night.